let me remove that. I had this all set up, and then the thing crashed. All of my photos went away, and that's what happened. I swear. So here's what we're talking about today. Erik Karlsson, I think, is going to become the primary driver of interest over the next 8 days until the NHL trade deadline. We're going to talk Erik Karlsson's situation, the economics of the deal, as well as who could be interested. I guess we can scratch Dallas off the list. Jim Nill certainly wasted no time or entertained no notion of getting Erik Karlsson. So we'll talk about that. Also, some NHL trade rumors. We're going to branch beyond the Penguins. I think there's 3 names that are really interesting to me to keep an eye on. Not necessarily the best players, but the most interesting. And then, of course, the fallout. The Penguins just getting shellacked by the Philly Flyers. And that, for all intents and purposes, was the end. Finito. 86 it. Gone. Plus, of course, whatever you want to talk about. I see some questions coming in already. Oh, so they're both the same. Why is Ned starting tonight? Because the Penguins still want to win games, because he's a human being, damn it. Listen, I honest to God, you all going to drive me to drink. Joel Blomqvist has been struggling lately. Also, Alex Nedeljkovic is not a throwaway. He's not in the way. This is how a goaltending tandem works. One goalie plays well, he stays in. Other goalie plays poorly, the other goalie goes back in. This is how it works. And since neither Penguins goalie has played well since the break, in fact, both of them have played terribly, well, you go with your number one guy, which at this point is Alex Nedeljkovic. I don't give a rat's tail how old Blomqvist is. He has to earn his ice time. Nedeljkovic has a body of work this season, especially those 3 weeks before the break when he led the NHL in save percentage. So they're going to try to get Nedeljkovic back into form because they still want to win games. You want them to lose. They want to win. All right? You can pound your feet or stomp your feet and pound your fist and hold your breath all you want. They're still trying to win games, and they're still going to play the best players. Just because Joel Blomqvist is 23 years old doesn't mean he gets to take precedent over Alex Nedeljkovic, especially when he plays as poorly as he has since being called up. Okay? That's the answer. You don't have to like it. That's the answer. It's not because Mike Sullivan hates young players. I'm just going to start cattle prodding people who say that. What if they were both poor? Well, then you go back to your number one, guys. That's exactly how it works. They're going to flip flop, and they're going to make. Every player has to make their way into the NHL. Even Sidney Crosby, in different ways, had to sort of assert himself into the game. I mean, he got ice time because he was just, the best player, one of the best players in the world, if not the best player in the world at 18 years old. But just think of the hardships that he went through and had to go through to assert him. And Joel Blomqvist, when he gets his next chance, he's going to play this weekend. Somebody had to play 2 of the 3 games. So when Joel plays this weekend, he had better make it count. Just as simple as that. Oh my God, more Nedeljkovic questions. I'm gonna end the chat. You all are killing me already. Cruz, Lucius, Tanner Howe, Finn Harding, Emil Piananemi, who's in Wilkes-Barre next year. Tanner Howe. I know Piananemi had a really good World Juniors. He hasn't impressed anybody when he's been here for the rookie camps, practices, and tournament and such. So I'm going to hijack the show. You can keep asking questions. I'm going to jump into this guy. Let me hide that. By the way, Cruz Lucius is playing at Arizona State. Let's not assume this guy is going to be a killer when he gets here. Erik Karlsson. Okay. His salary cap hit is $10 million. Actually, it's actually like a couple dollars short. Was it like $9.998 million with the way the 1.3% salary holdback figured out? So it's not quite $10 million, but for the purposes of any conversation, we're going to say $10 million. So Erik Karlsson has a $10 million salary cap hit. There are only a few teams that can afford that at the trade deadline. Obviously, Karlsson came to Pittsburgh to win a Stanley Cup. Obviously, it's not going to happen this year or next year. Not even close. The Penguins aren't even the Penguins aren't even on the right block yet to begin talking about that. So any trade talk around Erik Karlsson, first of all, is fair game because to my knowledge, I'm still the last reporter and maybe only one this year to walk up to Erik Karlsson and say, okay, what's the deal? And I did that, what was it? I think New Year's Eve, December 30th, New Year's Eve, somewhere around there. And his answer was perfect. I'm trying to get the Penguins into the playoffs. The door is open to that sort of thing in the future. But right now, my focus is this. So basically what it means is, all right, when it's time to talk about it, it's time to talk about it. And of course, now is Jim Nill, the Dallas Stars GM, reportedly scoffed at acquiring Karlsson. Said, where am I going to find $10 million and not give away my young players? Fair point, because Kyle Dubas would probably want young players. So that's a problem. There are some other teams that I think we can talk about. The Florida Panthers. Now, their salary cap structure isn't necessarily conducive to getting Erik Karlsson, full stop. But you can move salary. The Penguins have a wide open field with regards to salary cap. So they can take on anybody that Florida wants to trade to make it work. Aaron Ekblad is getting older. I mean, he was a number one pick. Boy, it seems like a lifetime ago. I do think Erik Karlsson and Paul Maurice would get along quite well. I think Erik Karlsson and and Matthew Tkachuk, and I assume Sam Bennett is going to re-sign. I don't know that. I think we all kind of assume that, but it hasn't happened yet. Ergo, maybe they need some offense, and they decide to add offense from the back end instead of at center. Evan Rodriguez, you're the new second-line center. The other team, another dark horse, I should say, to pay attention to would be Las Vegas. I shouldn't say Las Vegas. Vegas. It seems like they just find a way to get any player that they want. And let me, in fact, I should share the screen here. Give me a second. We're going to close that. Oh, here. Yeah. Okay. Share screen. Okay. Now you're looking at the same thing I am. So they're going to have like $2.4 million in cap space. They've got the giant injured reserve pool already. Like who are they going to trade that makes sense? The Penguins have to take back Ivan Barbashev and 3 more seasons at $5 million. Would the Penguins have to take Nicholas Waugh? Otherwise, because look, it makes sense. Since Shea Theodore has been injured, Vegas has been lost. Absolutely lost. But Theodore has 3 more years at 7.5. So how does that help? Vegas is not a great match. I'm looking at this now. I have no idea how Vegas would make it work. The Penguins would have to take on Barbashev, and boy, Barbashev and White Cloud. I mean, the numbers would work, but would Vegas want to do that? I don't know. And that, kids, is how difficult this is going to be for the trade deadline. In practicality, I don't expect Erik Karlsson to be moved in the next 8 days. I think it would make great sense for the Penguins to try like hell. I think the Penguins should do everything to make it happen. As I wrote the other day, it's time to trade Erik Karlsson. There's a little subset to this that I haven't really talked about too much. And that is, let's just say the Penguins clear all of the salary cap space. Now they're going to have the ability to go sign a bunch of free agents. They're going to have the ability to accelerate that turnover. I'm not going to use the word rebuild. I'm going to say turnover. They can accelerate that turnover with some trades, free agent signings. They even would have enough to sign a marquee name. And if they were to trade Karlsson before the trade deadline, like even just get nothing back, right? Just get nothing back, get that $10 million, and then tell people publicly, well, we wanted to do what was right by Erik. We had better offers. We wanted to do what was right by Erik and send him to X or Y team. When you have that kind of money, you can telegraph to those big names. And then maybe you start to entice a Sam Bennett, a Mitch Marner to carry you into the next sort of era. And I think, I would like to do that. I mean, if I'm in the GM's chair, that's kind of how I'm playing it. Who slots in for Bunting? Imama? Or did someone get a call up I haven't seen on X? They won't, Big Joe, they won't make that announcement until 2 o'clock. I can tell you didn't read my story that I wrote from practice. So here, I'm going to make you kind of read it now. No, long story short. By the way, you should have read this story. About Bunting's surgery, Boko and Mama, but also, guess who has a locker stall waiting? Wait for it. Wait for it. Who has a locker stall? Emil Bemstrom. So I have to assume that at 2:01, Nieto clears waivers, gets sent to Wilkes-Barre. Emil Bemstrom gets the call up. Aren't you glad, I'm so glad you guys give me the clicks to read. Ron says, let the kid play. I assume you mean Blomquist. I will cattle prod you, man. I have no problems giving you maybe just a taser. I'll go tasey crazy. Sports fan, I haven't read this question yet, so here we go. Do I feel it's better for Blomquist's development if he platoons up here or plays in Wilkes-Barre? I understand he needs NHL time, but a bad stint like this could do more harm than good. We're not yet to the point, sports fan, where there's harm being done. This is part of the process and the maturation. He's going to have to fight through a couple of bad games, a few bad games. He's going to have to fight through it not being a party, yay, we're winning, we're making the playoffs, we're going to win the Stanley Cup kind of environment. He's going to have to learn all of this. Blomquist is just about to the point. If he, I think he just might be anyway, to the point where he can't learn anymore in the AHL. That doesn't mean you feed him to the wolves, especially with the way this team plays defense. You just, you bring him along and you let him dictate the pace of his development. Michael, hey, Dan, I can see the Penguins moving on from Bunting. Not with appendicitis. This summer, perhaps, but he's a younger guy. He's a boisterous, enthusiastic guy. He brings things to the Penguins lineup they do not otherwise have anywhere. That net front, scrappy, energetic. They need a lot more of that, not any less of it. So I know Bunting's name has been tossed out there by some of my colleagues. You could knock me over with a feather if Bunting is traded. Or let me rephrase it. If he is traded, first of all, you could knock me over with a feather, but it would be one of those trades you're like, wow, yeah, they couldn't turn that down. I know Dallas said no to Karlsson. Ron, I wrote that. Let's see. Let's go to Flux. Florida would be perfect for Karlsson. They need an offensive blue liner, and they have they have about $9.5 million with Matthew Tkachuk on long-term injured reserve. Yeah, listen, Kucherov him. Bring in Karlsson with the spike next year. Yeah. I think Florida would be the best. People keep mentioning Ottawa for Karlsson. Well, actually, Nick Kyprios kind of keeps pushing that. I know Elliot Friedman has mentioned it as well. I don't see Ottawa being the best fit for Karlsson. Not with Sanderson, Shabbat. I don't think you want to replace those guys at the top of the blue line. I don't think you want to knock them down a roll or two, unless you get Erik Karlsson just to be your power play third pairing guy who plays 15 minutes and goes crazy. I suppose that could do it. Brendan, hey Dan, Josh Yo, he said on a podcast before the break that Letang isn't a lock to finish his career in Pittsburgh. As from talking to him, does he seem to be against it like Sid Gino? Any thoughts on this? Geez, Brendan, way to bring up my buddy, but competitor. We've talked about this too on our live chats, and I've written about it. So this is not me breaking new ground. If there is one of the three, it's Chris Letang. In fact, my most recent PHN Plus article, Brendan was had a big section right in the middle about Chris Letang. I should make you read it. In fact, you definitely should. What was the name of the article? I forget what headline I put on it. Let's see here. What was the headline? Oh, Insider Nuggets. Here. Go on to Pittsburgh hockey now. Some of you, like you all know that I'm a beat writer, right? And I cover the Penguins in person every day, not just for a YouTube channel, once a week, but actual reporter style, right? There is a big nugget down here about Letang. I'm not going to let you read it for free anyway. I am going to make you subscribe to PHN Plus to do so. And yet, no, it would not surprise me if Letang is traded this summer. My impression, my view from the outside, from afar, is that Chris Letang has not enjoyed this season whatsoever. Like at no point have I seen him kind of having fun. I mean, that's just... Do the Penguins make a deal before the deadline? Yes. Boy, Ron, you're on fire today. How about maybe the Kraken and the Canadiens in a three-way trade, trying to get back Tanev and Mike Matheson? It's going to take a multiple team deal, and you're talking about Erik Karlsson, $10 million per salary. Just hard to move. I don't know where the Montreal Mike Matheson trade rumors came from. That was a product of the Montreal media. And I'm not bashing the Montreal guys. I'm saying they assumed Mike Matheson would be moved with the emergence of Lane Hutson. Montreal GM Kent Hughes is like, whoa. I mean, Matheson is playing really good. He was playing really well. So, no, they're not going to. If the Penguins could get back Mike Matheson in an Erik Karlsson trade, first of all, the whole round the world, circle of life thing would be pretty funny, because the Penguins traded Mike Matheson for Jeff Petrie in the Karlsson deal. Now Karlsson for Matheson. But the Penguins would jump at that if they could get Mike Matheson back. That would be a huge overpay. That's just not going to happen. Jacob, looking at the roster, I think the only guy that is realistic to be moved is Grzelcyk. Yeah, I think there will be other moves. I think Anthony Beauvillier is likely to be moved, albeit for nothing. I thought that maybe they might keep him and re-sign him, but I don't get that impression right now. I also think that there is a potential for Tristan Jarry to be moved. There are enough teams begging for goaltending, and if the Penguins were to use their last salary retention spot, it would not be on Karlsson, but what if they ate half of Jarry? So now you've just basically given, someone's going to acquire Jarry for nothing. 3 years, $2.5 million per. That's not too bad for a backup goalie. That's right. That is dead even with what a backup goalie should make. So there's a lot of things that could happen. I'm a little surprised Kyle Dubas hasn't jumped yet. Sorry. Mike, Sullivan's system really requires smart players who can think the game 2 to 3 players ahead. That was on display at Four Nations. Are there players in the pipeline that can think, learn like Gensel and Rust did? You might be overstating it a bit, Mike, but I get where you're going with that you can't be stupid and play for Mike Sullivan. Having said that, there have been some pretty stupid players who were successful for Mike Sullivan. Sullivan is a good enough coach to understand when a guy's just not going to pick up the system and play a 200-foot game. But if he can mine something out of that player, he will. Hellcastle. So, look, Rutger McGroarty has a sky-high hockey IQ. I think that Ville Koivunen is another guy that is able to think the game. Tristan Brose is as well. I mean, these guys have good hockey IQs. Owen Pickering does. That's probably all you really need to worry about right now. But yes, your point is taken that it's tougher to be a dumb player with Mike Sullivan because the system isn't revolutionary anymore. I mean, Sullivan revolutionized the game back in 2016, and everyone's sort of caught up. And now hockey coaches are into this. I'm going to get into the weeds for you here. Some of you who watch the Francis Anzalone videos, the coaches rap or the coaches room, realize this. Hockey is moving to a positionless sort of, 5 players on the ice, all interchangeable in all 3 zones, depending on where you are. And, if I'm here, my responsibility is X or Y or Z, depending on the other teams, A or B or C. And there's a whole lot of information to be processed in not a whole lot of time, especially with the way skating is going as well. So I think hockey in general is moving that direction where smarter players who maybe don't have the greatest skating can compete with guys who have great skating and maybe a little bit of a slow elevator. Hockey speaking, anyway. Amy says, what's my favorite Mike Lang story? I wish I had one. I mean, I really do. I think I mentioned last week that I so revered Mike Lang that I didn't try to buddy up to him. I didn't go I didn't become like one of those, what's the word I'm looking for? sycophants, or I gave him his space. When I was new around the locker room, I introduced myself one day, and I really just, because that's Mike Lange. I idolized the guy growing up, idolized the guy early in my professional career, and I did play-by-play. So I don't have a great Mike Lange story. I'm sorry. I will tell you that my favorite Mike Lange moment was the 1991 Wales Conference Final. And Mario and Mark Recchi get the empty netter. Mario's like on his knees. And that's when Mike Lange yells out, "Ladies and gentlemen, spit shine your shoes. We're going dancing with Lord and Lady Stanley." And from somebody who'd been a Penguins fan for, 7, 8 years, which at that point was half my life, that was pretty incredible. That saying, that moment, still remember it. So that's my favorite Mike Lange moment. Robert thinks goaltending needs to be addressed. Well, you got Blomqvist, so unless you're tossing Blomqvist, tossing the baby out with the bathwater already, which would be bad, you still have Sergei Murashov on the way. They seem to like Philip Larson a lot more than I do. I'm not necessarily sold on Philip Larson having NHL potential, but they seem to be. You also got Tristan Jarry and Alex Nedeljkovic, so I don't know. No, they're not going to go out and get any more goaltenders. That's for sure. By the way, do y'all know where that saying comes from, throw the baby out with the bathwater? I had no idea. I heard this recently, that obviously, England was a pretty filthy, disgusting, cruddy sort of place for a long time. Basically, the sewer would be running down the middle of the side of the street. So if you were walking on the sidewalk, somebody literally might toss their bedpan out the window, or the contents of the bedpan, and you'd be wearing it. Gross, isn't it? So anyway, England, Middle Ages, the family would bathe like once in a while. They would go down to the river, get the water, bring it back, and father would bathe first. Obviously, father is the working man, so he's pretty cruddy. Water starts getting dirty. And then mom takes a bath. And then the kids, in order of seniority, take baths. So by the time the baby would take a bath, the water was just pretty much black. So baby in black bath water, don't toss the baby out with the bath water. See, now you learned something. Going to Jacob here. We do have some other stuff to get to, but yeah, we'll ride the Karlsson train. To the Karlsson potential, if the cap is going up, I could see the Penguins eating about $2.8 million. The amount of buyout cap coming off the books next year to make movement more feasible. Except I have to look to see if they have, because Riley Smith's contract ends this year, so they will get another slot next year. I suppose so. At that point, though, I don't think eating $2.5 million or 2.8, I don't think eating that is going to significantly increase or decrease your take. So you don't do it if you don't really have to. Jason, how does Karlsson's bonus payout on July 1st work with retention? Does the retention percentage just apply to the bonus payout? Or, oh man, you're asking me a CBA question without advance preparation. I don't know for sure, but if it's part of his salary, like if he's going to make a $5 million bonus and then 6.25 the rest of the year, then salary retention, I assume, would apply uniformly. And the Penguins would essentially write their $2.5 million check, let's say, and the acquiring team still have to give him a $5 million. But I could be entirely wrong, Jason. And Tanger should be dealt too. Well, let's just get rid of everybody. Let's go to Gable Fisk. I'm pretty dismissive of the idea of trading Rickard Rakell, but if Tampa is interested, I think a package centered on Connor Geekie would make sense for both parties. Well, Tampa Bay. Let's see here. Crosby's getting traded to Colorado. God help me. The TSN guys on Overdrive were at it again yesterday, saying, well, I mean, they've been told no in no uncertain terms. It's not happening. I know this for a fact. I know that I was pulled aside before I asked the question. Unfortunately, as I was getting pulled aside, another reporter was actually asking Crosby the trade question. So we both had the story. The source kind of was like, if I had known they were going to ask the same question, I would have pulled you both aside. Regardless, the TSN Overdrive guys were like, well, what if Crosby has a change of heart? It's not happening. Sidney Crosby has decided that he's around for a couple more years. I don't know. I suppose I could see it getting so dark, so miserable, so unfun. He's in a locker room with a bunch of schlubs, maybe some schlubs he doesn't like, and he's like, okay, I can't take this. But even Mario soldiered through it by, I don't know if you guys realize, maybe some of you aren't even old enough to remember, this is when the Penguins went out and reacquired Kevin Stevens, Mark Recchi, Mark Bergevin, who was one of Mario's great friends. And they brought these guys into the locker room, not to help the team, because the team was still putrid. They were there so that Mario had some people to hang out with and didn't go postal. Plain and simple. Michael Thompson says, I was at the game in Philly when we got blown out. I saw Sully's post game, said it had nothing to do with goaltending that night. I have to disagree. Ned was awful. So would Sullivan. Sullivan knew that goaltending played a role. Sullivan was putting on a public face in that moment for two reasons. All right, understand what Sullivan was doing there. One, he was protecting his goaltender. The team really has rallied around Alex Nedeljkovic. And Sullivan doesn't want to upset that chemistry, that dynamic. Sullivan likes the guy. Sullivan likes his scrappiness. Sullivan thinks that scrappiness rubs off on the rest of the team. So there's that. He's kind of taking a bullet for his player. But two, it was more important for Sullivan to send the message to the rest of the team that their play was unacceptable. Absolutely unacceptable. You guys stunk. If you had scored a couple of goals, maybe Ned could have settled in. Sullivan did bring up one correct point. It was 2-1 late in the second period. $1:30 to go, 90 seconds to go in the second period. The score is only 2-1. So it's not like Nedeljkovic cost them the game. Their defense really did, defensive effort cost them the game. But yeah, Nedeljkovic could have made a few saves. He admitted that. Nedeljkovic said, yeah. He's like, I don't know if we would have won tonight, but it wouldn't have been 6-1. Fair. Gwendolyn says, I love it when you're on the fan with Jason Mackey. Yeah, he and I had a pretty good chat last night. I appreciate it. I still kind of miss doing radio, hence the old radio mic here and the get up beside me and the fact I do this still. Let's see here. The power of art. If the Pens had a decent defense, I can tell you're Canadian power of art. The C gave you away. Jari would be a serviceable, I'm assuming you mean goaltender. Listen, if you have a good defense, pretty much every goaltender can be serviceable. The LA Kings are a prime example. How many goaltenders have the LA Kings rehabilitated in the last 2 or 3 years with really good defensive play? Look, David Riddick, terrible goalie, elsewhere, tossed about. Cam Talbot resurrects his career. And who am I missing? I'm missing a third goalie that I wanted to bring up but you get my point. The Penguins system. Oh, man, now I said it. I can't put that genie back in the bottle. But the Penguins' style of play does put a little more pressure on the goaltender. When the Penguins are playing well, New York, prime example. They can, in fact, that forecheck of theirs, and when they decide to create neutral zone traffic like they did against New York with that F3 swinging high to create another layer there, they really can limit shots as well. I wonder if Mike Sullivan's going to adopt a more defensive construct for the rest of the season. He doesn't seem to like to do that. He wants to keep things the same. He's afraid if he changes, it goes too defensive, the Stars will be unhappy and then things fall apart, or if he changes things, then he has to keep them the same next year. Coaches are funny like that, not just Sullivan. It's a waste to trade. Okay. Art, boy, you got a lot of comments here. Let me, this is how Dubas operates. He wastes assets. You are clearly Canadian, Art. Ron says Graves plays like he is scared. I don't know about scared. Graves certainly is a much more vanilla defender than any of us thought. I think that's maybe a kinder way to put it. Brian, Dubas talks aggressive, but his actions seem to be hesitant and reactionary. Is his confidence a little shaky, or is something else? I view Dubas as more methodical than anything. I view Dubas as the type of methodical GM that Ron Hextall was supposed to be. Hextall was reactionary and panicky. Hextall would hold the line, and then panic, as evidenced by the contracts to Evgeny Malkin and Chris Letang, as evidenced by acquiring Mikael Granlund after the other trade. I think it was JT Miller, didn't come to fruition. So they said, who can we get? Mikael Granlund. If they had done 2 seconds of homework, they would have known that Granlund was going through some things that was really impacting the quality of his hockey. Now that he's not going through those things anymore, you see what he's done with San Jose as a top-line player, and I hear he's playing pretty well with Dallas. So I see Dubas as methodical, if anything. I don't know. Maybe you might be right, though. Oh, here's a cool question. In my opinion, who do I think will have the best NHL career out of the big names at the, what is this, 38-30? Okay, I want to make sure when I write up the post game of this, 38-30, I started talking prospects. Okay, so that's a really good question. Pickering is going to be a solid and steady defenseman who chips in a bit of offense, I think. He's not going to be a frontline guy. I wonder what's up with Vasily Ponomarev. I think he is struggling because he's not already in the NHL. I think he's experimenting. I think he's pushing, trying too hard, doing some dumb things, so on and so forth. But even so, before he kind of started gripping the stick too tightly, I didn't project him more than a fourth liner. It will be a contest. Well, you said AHL, so Sergei Murashov is out. So I don't have to qualify this with a Sergei Murashov sort of thing. It is going to be a battle between Rutger McGroarty and Ville Koivunen. Not battle, you get what I'm saying. It'll be a contest between those two to see who has the better NHL career. I do think you're going to see Koivunen and McGroarty in the lineup by Christmas of next year. McGroarty probably out of training camp. Koivunen might require a good training camp and preseason, for him to take that information, process it, go down to the AHL, work on just one or two more little things, and then storm the NHL. Or he might just do it all this summer and come ready and take it out of camp. The Penguins might open the door for those guys to do that too. But it's McGroarty or Koivunen. If I had to pick one, I'm going to surprise you here. I'm going to say Koivunen. I think McGroarty might get cast as a third-line scorer type, a 15-goal, power play 2, penalty kill 1 sort of guy. I mean, you can make a lot of money that way. Don't get me wrong. You can stick around an organization a long time being very useful. What was the word Frank Saravalli used last week? Optionality? I had never heard that. I'm not sure that was a real word, but he used the word optionality when talking about Erik Karlsson last week. I think McGroarty might come with more optionality, and thus Koivunen would become a top 6 winger. All right, let's get to some of these more. Let me get to some newbies here. Nick, the whole deal with the dad bathing first is the reason for the invention of the rubber duck, to entice the children by making the filthy water fun. I didn't know that, so I guess we can add on to my story. Helps now. EK65 makes less than his cap hit. Matheson was owed more than his cap hit. Could you look into the Pens trying to save cash? Let me answer the Penguins' cash question up front. They've given Kyle Dubas a blank check, period. Whatever money he needs, so they're not gonna make a trade to save a few bucks. They're gonna make a trade because it makes hockey sense. Have been told that high up, low down, and everywhere in between. Now, Fenway Sports Group watches the money like a hawk. They don't waste it. But they're not Bob Nutting, who hoards it. Yeah, Mario played with the team so bad it was a beer league equivalent, and he stayed in Pittsburgh. There were trade rumors. It would have been like 2003 and 4. They popped up a couple of times that Mario would accept a trade to Montreal, putting his ownership of the team in a blind trust so that he could do that. I don't know if those were ever legit or if that was Montreal media. Montreal media used to be a lot louder and a lot more out there than they are now. Let's go to Jason again, since I kind of punted your last question. Later in Mario's career, the team was tanking while he was the owner. Put a pin in that. I'm going to refute that in a second. I don't understand why Crosby magically makes the team incapable of tanking. Okay. I want you all to sort of take that word tanking out of your vocabulary, because it is such a loaded word, and some people take it to mean that the team is trying to lose. Other people think the GM is trying to lose. Other people just think it's losing naturally. And so that makes it impossible to say what I'm about to say coming up next. One, the Penguins in no way were trying to lose back in like 2003 and 4. They couldn't afford an NHL roster. Full stop. If they could have put players around Mario who could have won, if they could have afforded free agents, they would have done it in a heartbeat. Don't forget, before they had Crosby, coming out of that lockout of 2005, Craig Patrick went on a spending spree with, what's his name? Ziggy Palffy, Jocelyn Thibault, Sergei Gonchar actually stuck around. John LeClaire, Mark Recchi came back. They threw money around like they were in Congress. It failed miserably. Wait, no, I guess that was Crosby's rookie year. I'm sorry. But still, they were done rebuilding. That was for sure. Yeah, that was Crosby's rookie year, Mario's last year that they went on the spending spree. And it completely bottomed out. But no, they weren't trying to tank. They were just that poor. They had such a terrible arena deal, and I'm getting off. Let's see here. I have a little Christopher Walken to my inflection. All the Pens need is more cow. I can't see now. I try to do it. All right. Let's see here. Let's go to Donnie. I'm sure you've had this question 1,000 times after the Four Nations and the way the Pens came out of the gate or lack thereof. Any chance of the core realizing the playoffs are probably not in the future and consider a playoff run with another team? Would they drop the no trade for the right team? Malkin only has one more year left. And he was pretty emphatic last week. It's here in Pittsburgh. I'm here in Pittsburgh. Done. So Malkin's off the list. Crosby has answered the questions in somewhat good humor, but you can tell he's a little bit annoyed by them. He's not leaving. Chris Letang, he's talked publicly about his family living in Los Angeles right now. His son's in LA playing hockey and so on and so forth. So Letang would be the guy. Yeah. I don't know. If you look, Donnie, at what the Penguins' big three have sacrificed to remain together and as part of the Penguins, personally and professionally, if you look at what they've sacrificed, it's extraordinary. So why would you break up now? Because you're not going to win? They knew this was coming. They've won. They view themselves now as the Shepherds, although they surely would like to try to win next year. And Dubas, full stop, Dubas told Crosby that they were going to try to set it up to win in 2025-26. That's when, Crosby said it helped to hear those things. So if you're asking me today, the answer is full stop, no on 2 of the 3, maybe on the 3rd. Ask me again, let's say Christmas next year. We could be having a whole different conversation. Okay. Anyway, what do you think the Pens lineup would look like now if Jim Rutherford was still the GM? It would look nothing like what Jim Rutherford would have found a way to move Ryan Graves 2 months into Ryan Graves' tenure with the Penguins. Jim Rutherford would, Rutherford would have moved on from several mistakes very quickly. I do think, in fairness to Dubas, I do think Rutherford would have also signed Tristan Jarry to that deal. Only because I think the Penguins as an organization felt they had no choice. So Rutherford would have done that. Boy, there are so many moves that would have been made that haven't been. That is almost impossible. Koivunen has the highest upside, Jason says. Harrison Brunick and Rutger McGroarty are middle lineup players. Brunick, let's talk about him in a second here. I think Koivunen has the best hands and IQ of the prospects with the highest upside. Let's talk about Harrison Brunick because I saw a slick right-handed defenseman. No, he won't be an Erik Karlsson Norris Trophy winner. But he could be really good, kind of in the mold of Alex Pietrangelo. Kind of, a guy who adds offense, plays defense, becomes sort of a big stalwart for his team. I could see Brunick being that. I was really impressed with him in training camp. Just blown away. He actually, until the volume got turned up. In the last preseason game, he kind of got exposed a little bit as not quite being ready for prime time. Until that point, he looked like a little bit of a better version of Marcus Pettersson. So if he's there now, he can really take a big step. Big Joe, do you think Dubas makes any splash in the college free agents? I haven't even bothered to look, Big Joe. I'll be honest. When we get past the trade deadline, then I'll pay attention to that sort of stuff. But I haven't even heard any big names that are going to be available. Rutger McGroarty was going to be the big name available until the Penguins acquired him and signed him. I feel like Sid would have had a higher trade value in his prime than Mario would have in his. No. Think about what teams offered for Mario Lemieux on draft day. The Nordiques offered their entire draft and the Stastnys. Yeah. Gable Fisk wants a top 5 draft pick. Yep, you don't need to tank to get that. This team, I think, is settling in to that 4 or 5 pick. The ping pong ball bounces their way. They might end up with a 3rd or 4th pick. Imagine this. If they lose a couple more games here, you might be talking James Hagens. I'm just saying. Let's see here. Now you guys are arguing amongst yourselves. I'm going to skip past that. Let's go down here to Sean. Michael Thompson. Oh, you guys are all yelling at poor Michael Thompson. Do me a favor, guys, when you do that, make sure to at him so that I can skip over it. Do I think Letang would accept the trade to Montreal or L.A.? I don't know. Letang has said nothing of the sort has crossed his mind. That was a few months ago. And I haven't gone back. Maybe I should go back. Actually, the next time I will have an unfettered chance to talk to Chris Letang will be Denver next week. I don't know if I'm skipping practice to go to Denver or if I'm leaving after practice. I don't remember. But that might be the next time I've got a full shot at Letang. All right, kids, that is 53 minutes, and I haven't even gotten to the rumors with Seth Jones and Mikko Rantanen. You guys sidetracked me with some of this stuff. I hope you're having fun. Let's see here. So I'm going to take you to Nick Kyprios's trade board here. And we're going to have a little fun outside the Penguins because there are 3 names that really intrigue me. I don't think Elias Pettersson is. But Mikko Rantanen being back on the block because he goes to Carolina, he's unhappy, doesn't like it, just whatever it is, nothing is working. Could the Hurricanes trade him? I know what Jim Rutherford would do. I don't know what Don Waddell and Rod Brind'Amour are going to do. I do think it might behoove Carolina this summer to sit down and really evaluate Rod Brind'Amour as a coach. He's kind of getting that Guy Boucher stink on him right now because of the Rantanen. I think the Rantanen thing is really pushing that narrative over the finish line, where Brind'Amour has a very good team. He's making more of the team than it should be, but he's also in the process holding back star players, Sebastian Aho primarily. You know, Jake Gensel leaving really punctured Carolina's psyche a bit. And if another star winger says, no, I'm not down for this, you really have to look at Rod Brind'Amour's tenure and how much longer it would be. Here's another name I find fascinating. because I think the Bruins are realizing they are not going to make the playoffs, or if they do, they're going to do nothing in the playoffs. They went and got the goalie. They got Linus Ullmark and, I'm sorry, they didn't get Ullmark. Ottawa has Ullmark. They've got Jeremy Swayman. They used to have Ullmark. You know what I mean? But it's Boston needs a retool, a refresh. Will they trade Brad Marchand to make it happen? Again, if you're on the PlayStation GMing this, it's easy. You do it. But there's a human factor and a human cost. Marchand isn't quite Sidney Crosby, although neighbors. In terms of I'm a one jersey guy, I'm a Bruin for life, but he's pretty close. Also, Don Sweeney might not want to buy any green bananas there in Boston. If the Bruins do go in the tank, if they just soil the bed for the rest of the season, don't make the playoffs, I think Don Sweeney's job could really come into play. Seth Jones. If the Penguins were able to move Erik Karlsson, boy, you look at Seth Jones, guy who can skate and add offense like that. Not happy in Chicago. He doesn't fit the Penguins' current arc, unfortunately. But there's a primetime rescue right there. Absolutely primetime rescue opportunity. Buy low, sell high. His $9 million, $9.5 million salary in 2 years is going to look like nothing, especially if he winds up on the right team. Side note to Penguins fans, this is what happens, Larry, when you meet a stranger in the Alps. This is what happens, Larry, when your rebuild or your retool, I should say, becomes a rebuild and you teeter over into the abyss and you fall into the abyss and you tear it down to the studs. This is what happens. Even the smartest moves don't work. Even a great player like Connor Bedard somehow starts getting questioned. Bad habits. Maybe he's not as good as we thought. All of those things are happening in Chicago, and that's what happens when you teeter into the abyss. And I tell you now, this is why Kyle Dubas is scratching and clawing and trying like hell to avoid that tear down rebuild that falls into the abyss. I think Sam Bennett's going to re-sign. I think first team that can pony up for Erik Karlsson is going to happen. And I don't see Elias Pettersson getting traded, although his recent comments were pretty petulant, actually. He's like, they ask him about, he's kind of in a scoring slump again. What's going on? He's like, wow, I just hate dealing or talking to the media. You're right. Waddell is in Columbus. Eric Tulsky is the general manager of Carolina. Sorry, guys. Yes. See, when I'm just off the cuff, sometimes some of that stuff slips past me here. Didn't catch it. But yes, you guys absolutely are correct. Okay, folks, that is just about 1 hour. I have enjoyed you. So here's what we're going to do. Last call for questions. Last call for alcohol. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. So I'm going to give you about 30 seconds now that we've done that. We didn't even get to the fallout of the Penguins losing games because the Penguins outplayed the Washington Capitals significantly. By the way, that's Mike Sullivan's big game blazer, as named by the women on the beat and around the team. That's the big game blazer. I think even Sullivan has kind of quietly admitted, yeah, okay, big game we have to win. He wears that blazer. They outplayed Washington for the better part of 40 minutes. Bang, bang, they're down 4-2, and it was over. They beat the Rangers pillar to post for 60 minutes. Bad goaltending. Just rough day, bad luck. They lose again, and their heart was broken. So what's the fallout? I should ask all of you a question. I should ask you all this. What do you care about over the next 22 games? What is going to make you excited? What's going to make you bother to pay attention to a team that's not going to make the playoffs? Is it going to be, which prospect plays well and rooting for those guys? Is it going to be some of your favorites claiming a roster spot or I didn't go anywhere, I promise. Just the MacBook, for some reason, if you swipe left, it goes back a couple of pages. What do you care about? Oops, I'm kicking everything now. I have a new hobby, shopping for Nike and Air Jordans. That's what, a few years ago, it was, some cool dress shoes. Then it was watches. Which watch? Oh, this watch, by the way, actually they use the Apollo rocket lettering with metal from some of the Saturn rockets. I bought some cool stuff. Don't get me wrong. So Saturday morning, 10 a.m., the big drop. Everyone's like waiting in line online and in the shoe stores. And I got me a pair. Those are Jordan Lucky shorts. Back in 1991, these were the bomb. Or these pretty close to what I wore as a freshman in high school when I was all of 5'2". No, it wasn't my phone. It was, it was the laptop. But the fallout with the Penguins, Mike Sullivan didn't think it was a broken heart, but then I sort of think the next day, maybe my question penetrated a little bit. Maybe my question kind of got into his head, because I was the one who asked him, hey, you just so thoroughly outplayed the Rangers and played well all weekend. Was the team discouraged, a little heartbroken? And he's like, well, I didn't see that today. I mean, but then on Wednesday, he's kind of talking about having a hardness of mindset. I mean, dude, just say mentally tough, please. It's a lot easier to print mentally tough than a hardness of mindset. And that's the Penguins clearly had their heart ripped out of their chest. That is the fallout, is that I don't believe the Penguins believe that they can win games anymore. They will win games, but every one of these games they've got a lead or they're playing well or things are tight, they are going to be uptight because it was ripped from them. I mean, by their own hand, but still, that is going to need to be rebuilt this summer. They're going to need some guys who come in with some confidence or youthful stupidity, who don't know any better, who don't care about the past and those sorts of things. They're going to need to refresh a bit of the locker room determination, mindset, heart, all of it. In fact, I should do a video exclusively on, I'm going to make a note, video on heart, Heart. There. I feel like Gene Hackman, rest his soul. Heart. Miles and miles of heart. Okay, there go. Yeah. Wait, I did put out the last call. Yep, a lot of you want to see the kids play. That's what I'm seeing here. Good effort, kids playing. Seeing how the core responds to the rest of the season. That's interesting, sports fans. Or sports fan. Okay. All right, folks. Now I'm done. I appreciate y'all. Like, subscribe. And hey, if you're feeling generous, go to PHN Plus and subscribe there. That's really what keeps all of this afloat. All right. We'll talk again. Have fun.